So we've been talking about self-compassion over the weekend, and within the Mindfulness Association's compassion training, we go into a lot of depth around how to practice compassion to ourselves and around what it is. So we have these two words, self-compassion, and I thought I'd just clarify briefly what we really mean by that. Yeah, it needs to be brief because we just have a brief time. And if you're interested to go deeper into that, you're very welcome to look into the compassion training that the Mindfulness Association offers. But just to encapsulate it in a nutshell, there where I guided a practice where we began by noticing what's here. And sometimes when we notice what's here, we find things that are difficult. And so the first part of self-compassion is to feel what's here even when it's difficult. So this relates back to the definition of compassion that Christine shared yesterday morning, the sensitivity to the suffering of self and others, and the deep commitment to try to relieve it. So the first part, the sensitivity, that's the noticing, that's the feeling what's here, even when it's difficult. And then the second part, the commitment to try to relieve it, is a shift. It's like shifting position into our compassionate capacity to respond. So we could bring this into just two words, maybe an easy way to remember it: to feel and then to respond compassionately. So feel and respond. And so that's how we would practice compassion. In the practice just then, I guided us to come into that response using our hands. And there are many, many ways that we can experiment with how to cultivate compassion and how to do that responding. We can use visualization, we can work with the body, we can use gesture. There's many, many ways. But here in that little practice, I guided us using a gesture because it feels like a very immediate way to connect with that compassionate response to ourselves. So here in this session, I want to kind of jump off from that foundation, the foundation I've just described to you, which is how to practice self-compassion. I want to kind of jump off of it and launch us into a little journey into kind of what self-compassion might be. And I think the key thing here is that self-compassion feels to me like a shift in how we inhabit our skin. So rather than inhabiting our skin in a habitual way, which can cause us suffering on top of the suffering that's already there anyway, it's a shift into a compassionate response and a shift into having our own back, as Christine said in the session about fierce compassion yesterday, and a shift into meeting ourselves as we are. That could be the acceptance piece. And a shift into self-respect as well. I think it can be many, many things. There can be different qualities to that shift. And this is what these poems bring. They kind of shine a different light or give a different flavor or quality to the ways that we could shift into a compassionate way of being with ourselves. And reading the poems while I was preparing, what I really noticed is that self-compassion is a shift in how we inhabit our own skin, but then that's almost inseparable from a shift in how we relate to others as well, and then how we walk in the world. So it's self-compassion for me feels like it relates very strongly to how we are in the world. And that's because the ways that we've learned to be with ourselves are very conditioned, culturally conditioned from our family as well. So there's a lot of stuff there about how we relate to the world or society or culture, what voices we have in our head about how we're supposed to be. And these poems in different ways really touch on that, I think. So I'd like to give you a little hint of how you might be with the poems, how you might receive them. And I'm going to read a series of poems, one after the other. And I think it's a little bit like each poem is like a room that we go into. So it could be like we've got a series of rooms ahead of us now. And each time I read a poem, I'm kind of taking you by the hand into the next room. And each room will feel really different. But if you can, when you receive the poem into your practice, if you can feel yourself kind of inhabiting that room, and then just feeling, what is it like to stand in this room, you know, what this poem is evoking and how it feels in the body. And I'll guide all of this as we go along. So I'm going to couch it all into practice, and we'll have I'll guide us to settle a bit, then I'll read a poem, then we'll share a bit in the chat. We'll do this all silently, I think. We won't speak till the end. Sharing in the chat, then I'll read another poem and keep it kind of couched in the practice and share in the chat again. And I think I've got a pile of poems here, and I was having such trouble deciding which ones. I'm hoping to narrow it down to about 5. Otherwise, I think it would just feel like too much. But what I think would also help is if you have the feeling that you're not trying to grasp on to whatever comes from the poems, but if you can just let them all sort of shower over you, as if like a shower of rain, and you don't have to catch hold of it. Something will be already happening. You'll be experiencing it coming in already just from hearing it. And because I've only just decided which poems to share, I haven't actually got links ready for you for them, but we'll find a way to organize that. Maybe I'll get that sorted out in the next break. So, which I don't know which metaphor you prefer, whether you prefer the idea of moving through a series of rooms or of just standing in a shower of rain, of a shower of poems, whichever one you prefer. You can kind of let that help you to receive the poems. Okay, are there any questions before we move into our poem journey? Okay, so if you want to maybe have a little stretch and move around a moment, and maybe give yourself a little massage or a little rub, maybe just a little bit of shaking out if you feel you need that. And then once you're ready, you can come into a posture that feels good for practicing. Ding. So taking a little bit of time to once again find an embodied presence, seeing if we can let our mind and our heart find their home in this moment, in this body. Maybe releasing the mind chatter that might be going on without pushing it away, without suppressing it, but just removing our attention and placing our attention into our breathing body. Maybe feeling as if it's possible to listen in the most gentle of ways to how our body breathes. And this isn't a top-down head kind of listening, but a feeling, opening kind of internal listening. So experiencing the sensations that, when put together, we call the breath. Experiencing these like a massage coming from inside us. Maybe opening up as well, so that it's a listening that isn't confined to our body, but is receptive and present in the world as well. As if the borders of our body, as if our skin is breathable. And all the while a sense of being anchored through gravity holding us on the earth. And then as we open up to receiving the poems coming into the practice, just seeing if you want to put a hand on your heart or connect with a compassionate feel or intention in some way. So our resting here and our breath and our very gentle listening can have a quality of heart, quality of compassion. And this is the space that we will let the poems fall into when I read them. This space of resting, of anchored groundedness, and of heart. So the first poem is called How to Open Your Heart by Jeff Foster. Do not try to open your heart now. That would be a subtle movement of aggression towards your immediate embodied experience. Never tell a closed heart it must be more open. It will shut more tightly to protect itself, feeling your resistance. A heart unfurls only when conditions are right. Your demand for openness invites closure. This is the supreme intelligence of the heart. Instead, bow to the heart in its current state. If it's closed, let it be closed. Sanctify the closure. Make it safe, safe even to feel unsafe. Trust that when the heart is ready and not a moment before, it will open like a flower in the warmth of the sun. There is no rush for the heart. Trust the opening and the closing too. The expansion and the contraction, this is the heart's way of breathing. Safe, unsafe. Safe, unsafe. The beautiful fragility of being human, and all held in the most perfect love. So just noticing how that poem feels. What does it bring to you? Does it resonate? Does it jar? Just sitting and letting it ripple through whatever it brought, letting that deepen within you if you want to. And if you want to share in the chat a few words, then feel free to. And also, if you prefer not to interrupt and you just want to sit, that's fine. So we'll gradually come back from any writing or reading into simply sitting. See if we can feel ourselves here, the aliveness of our body, open, ready for another poem soon. Reconnecting with the heart quality as well, if you want to. So the next poem is very different. And see how it brings something fresh, something new. It's the opening to receive this next poem. It's called The Pineapple by Chelan Harkin. The gnarled tree with limbs going every which way, grabbing at sunlight from all directions to nourish its crooked body. The rose, elegant and defensive, hypervigilant in her thorns. The pineapple, scaly, yellow and flamboyant, with that stiff green-leafed hairdo sticking straight up. The violet, tender and timid. And even the cactus that won't let anyone touch it. They all whisper the same thing. It's okay to be all of you, just as you are. So again, just noticing how the poem feels, what it brings. Noticing the body's response. Maybe there's images. Maybe there's a recognition. Maybe there's a reaction of some kind, an impulse. Just observing and feeling and allowing the response. And if you want to share in the chat, once again, that invitation is open. Okay, and again, just reconnecting with our presence here in this moment. You might want to reconnect with the breath. Okay, so our next poem is called I Worried by Mary Oliver. I worried a lot. Will the garden grow? Will the rivers flow in the right direction? Will the earth turn as it was taught? And if not, how shall I correct it? Was I right? Was I wrong? Will I be forgiven? Can I do better? Will I ever be able to sing? Even the sparrows can do it, and I am, well, hopeless. Is my eyesight fading, or am I just imagining it? Am I going to get rheumatism, lockjaw, dementia? Finally, I saw that worrying had come to nothing and gave it up and took my old body and went out into the morning and sang. So again, just feeling the response that comes from within you, listening to the response, being a home for the response. And if you feel like writing something, then go ahead. So again, just coming back into being. Ready to, in a moment or two, receive the next poem. So this one is called For Warmth, and it's by Thich Nhat Hanh. I hold my face between my hands. No, I am not crying. I hold my face between my hands to keep my loneliness warm. Two hands protecting, two hands nourishing, two hands to prevent my soul from leaving in anger. Again, noticing what that little poem brought to you, feeling, experiencing it, and writing something if you want to. And then returning to being and sitting, reconnecting with the breath, reconnecting with our heartfelt connection with ourselves. And I have a final poem for you. So just opening up now to receive this last one. So this one is called The Most Important Thing by Julia Fehrenbacher. I am making a home inside myself, a shelter of kindness where everything is forgiven, everything allowed, a quiet patch of sunlight to stretch out without hurry, where all that has been banished and buried is welcomed, spoken, listened to, released. A fierce, friendly place I can claim as my very own. I am throwing arms open to the whole of myself, especially the fearful, fault-finding, falling apart, unfinished parts, knowing every seed and weed, every drop of rain has made the soil richer. I will light a candle, pour a hot cup of tea, gather around the warmth of my own blazing fire. I will howl if I want to, knowing this flame can burn through any perceived problem, any prescribed perfectionism, any lying limitation, every heavy thing. I am making a home inside myself where grace blooms in grand and glorious abundance. A shelter of kindness that grows all the truest things. I whisper, hallelujah, to the friendly sky. Watch now as I burst into blossom. So again, just sitting with awareness as we let that poem touch us, whatever way it does. And if you want to share in the chat, please do. And then Coming back to a simple mindful presence. Maybe noticing how you are, and noticing now what feels like to have received that shower of poems. Maybe something's lingering, maybe there's an accumulation of feeling. Maybe there's lots of different feelings or impressions. So whatever's here now, just attending and opening, feeling with kindness. And then finally, letting go of any particular inclination or intention, and just being here. There's nothing more to do. Ding, ding, ding. Okay, so the next 10 minutes or so, I think, would be well spent in breakout rooms if we could share a little bit. So there'll be an invitation to join if you want to. Of course, as always, if you prefer to journal or just sit quietly, you can do that. But maybe you'd like to just spend a bit of time sharing how that felt, what came to you in that experience. So just taking a moment to rest once again, and to appreciate and to feel as if it's possible to gather into our heart all the benefits from this session, so that they can come with us into the next moments, days, weeks of our life. And so that we can perhaps in some way share the benefit as we walk through our life. Share the benefit in widening circles. Ding.